In 1972, the film Deliverance crashed onto cinema screens, creating a visceral phenomenon that would forever alter the landscape of American filmmaking. Directed by John Boorman, this harrowing tale of four city men on a canoeing trip down a fictional Georgia river transformed a weekend getaway into a primal nightmare of survival. It was a commercial and artistic triumph, exploring the brutal collision between civilized man and the unforgiving laws of nature. The film's haunting banjo melody and its shocking depictions of violence seared themselves into the collective memory of a generation. But once the cameras stopped rolling and the actors left the Cohulawasi River, they returned to lives that were often as turbulent as the rapids they had navigated on screen. 53 years have passed since that iconic release. Time, like a relentless river, has carved deep lines into their destinies. Some ascended to the dizzying heights of Hollywood royalty, while others found their peace in obscurity, or saw their journeys cut short by tragedy. Today, let us peel back the curtain and drift down the river of memory to explore the poignant, triumphant, and sometimes heartbreaking true stories of the men who gave Deliverance its soul. Jon Voight as Ed Gentry. In Deliverance, Ed Gentry served as the audience's anchor, an ordinary, mild-mannered man who is stripped of his civilized veneer and forced to confront extraordinary cruelty. Portrayed by Jon Voight. At the age of 34, Ed was the character who had to make the impossible choice to kill or be killed. Voight's performance was a masterclass in subtle transformation, capturing the terrifying shift from a suburban family man to a trembling survivor holding a bow. It was a role that required a quiet intensity, and Voight delivered a performance that was both authentic and haunting, launching him into the stratosphere of serious acting talent. Following the success of Deliverance, Voight's career trajectory seemed to know no bounds. He became a titan of the industry, eventually winning an Academy Award for Coming Home and earning acclaim for his intense dedication in films like Runaway Train and Heat. However, as his professional fame grew, the gravitational pull of his personal life began to drag him in the opposite direction. The dedication he gave to his craft often came at a steep price. His first marriage to Lori Peters crumbled during the grueling production of Midnight Cowboy, a project that required months of psychological immersion that kept him physically and emotionally absent. His second marriage to Marshalene Bertrand seemed to offer stability lasting longer, yet it too buckled under the weight of his soaring career and the increasing emotional distance he maintained while filming projects like The Odessa File. This fracture in his family life had long-term consequences. Old wounds resurfaced publicly during the rise of his daughter, Angelina Jolie. Their relationship became a tabloid fixture, turning a fragile father-daughter bond into a lasting conflict. By the time the estrangement was publicly acknowledged, the pain had been festering for over a decade, a shadow that loomed over his public successes. Physically, the years were not kind to the action star. The demanding stunts of his youth, particularly the punishing work on Runaway Train, left him with chronic back pain that only worsened as he aged. Even in his later years, taking on roles in films like Anaconda, he pushed his body through, strenuous scenes contributing to a chronic fatigue that plagued him in his twilight years. Yet he refused to stop working, driven by an internal motor that few could understand. In 2025, at the age of 86, Jon Voight remains a presence in Hollywood, though the frenetic pace has finally slowed. He still acts with finesse, but he no longer chases the grueling schedules of the past. His net worth, estimated at around $55 million, is built on a lifetime of hits like Mission Impossible and Pearl Harbor, as well as lucrative television roles. Now living a more contemplative life, he has found a form of liberation. Legacy commands admiration, but it is his survival, both of the Hollywood machine and his own personal trials, that remains his most striking achievement. Burt Reynolds as Lewis Medlock. Burt Reynolds was born to be a star, and in Deliverance he found the vehicle that would strap him to a rocket. Playing Lewis Medlock, the brave, muscular, and hubristic survivalist Reynolds was the physical embodiment of machismo. At 36, he played the leader of the expedition, the man whose strength eventually leads to a shattering vulnerability. His performance was magnetic, mix of bravado and charisma that defined the archetype of the 1970s leading man. Overnight, the film catapulted him to the very pinnacle of Hollywood. Throughout the 1970s and early 80s, Reynolds was the #1 box office draw in the world, the undisputed king of cool. Yet this immense fame brought him everything except the one thing he secretly craved: stability. His romantic life became fodder for the tabloids, crumbling under the immense pressure of the spotlight. His marriage to Judy Carn fell apart as his star rose, and his high-profile marriage to Lonnie Anderson ended in a spectacular, chaotic divorce during the promotion of his later films, playing out in a blaze of financial disputes and public acrimony. Even his most cherished relationships, like the one with Sally Field, whom he starred with in 4 films, could not withstand the strain of his career. He later admitted she was the love of his life, but overlapping productions and his own insecurities let her slip away. The physical toll of his stardom was equally devastating. The daring waterfall stunts he insisted on performing himself in Deliverance left him with a tailbone injury and persistent back pain that would haunt him forever. Later onset injuries, including a shattered jaw, led to a dependency on painkillers that became a lifelong struggle, a dark secret behind the charming smile. Despite prostate cancer in 2009, heart surgery in 2011, and years of untreated anxiety, Reynolds kept working. He experienced a late career renaissance, with his Oscar-nominated role in Boogie Nights referenced as the other side of Hollywood in his timeline, reminding the world of his immense talent. He was a man who lived fast, drove hard, and smiled through the pain, embodying a bygone era of movie stardom. However, the heart that had beaten so wildly for decades finally gave out. On September 6, 2018, Burt Reynolds passed away from a heart attack in Jupiter, Florida, at the age of 82. His death abruptly ended the stunts and the laughter. His ashes were interred at Hollywood Forever Cemetery in 2021, beneath a bronze bust unveiled on what would have been his 85th birthday, leaving behind a net worth estimated at $5 million, a figure reflecting decades of bad business deals and generosity. His true legacy was the indelible mark he left on American culture. Ned Beatty as Bobby Tripp. Ned Beatty was a character actor of the highest order, but his introduction to the world was a trial by fire. Born in Louisville, Kentucky, Beatty was 35 when he was cast as Bobby Tripp, the soft, unsuspecting businessman in Deliverance. He was not the hero, he was the victim. His brutalization in the woods became one of the most shocking and controversial moments in cinema history. Beatty portrayed the terror and humiliation of Bobby with such raw, unflinching honesty that it seared the scene into the viewer's mind. This role brought him instant Hollywood acclaim, but it came with a heavy burden. For years, he fought to escape the shadow of that single scene to ensure he wasn't forever associated with fragility and victimization. He deliberately avoided leading roles in the mid-70s, choosing instead to build a reputation as a versatile powerhouse in films like Nashville. His strategy worked. He earned an Oscar nomination for his electrifying monologue in Network 1976, proving his range went far beyond the woods of Georgia. His personal life was a quest for the stability his characters often lacked. After early marital struggles, his marriage to Sandra Johnson became his rock, supporting him through a tireless work schedule. Beatty was a workaholic, appearing in over 160 films and television shows. He was the man who could play anything, from the bumbling henchman in Superman to the heartfelt father in Rudy. However, this relentless productivity took a toll on his health. Years of being overweight and the exhaustion of constant filming gradually wore him down. By the 2000s, the physical strain limited his ability to take on demanding roles. Yet he found a new generation of fans through voice acting, bringing a sinister charm to Lotso in Toy Story 3 and a quirky wisdom to Rango. These roles became an oasis of calm for him, allowing him to perform without the physical rigors of the set. He had successfully redefined himself, proving to the world that he was defined by his talent, not by a single moment of on-screen trauma. The final curtain fell quietly. For this giant of the screen, Ned Beatty died on June 13, 2021 at the age of 83 of natural causes at his home in Los Angeles. With a net worth estimated at $4 million in 2025, reflecting a career built on blue-collar reliability and artistic excellence, he left behind a legacy of incredible breadth. He proved that an actor could survive the most harrowing of beginnings to become one of the most respected figures in the industry. Ronny Cox as Drew Ballinger. Ronny Cox brought a gentle intellectual soul to the rough quartet in Deliverance, born in New Mexico. Cox was 34 when he played Drew Ballinger, the sincere guitarist. He is best remembered for the dueling banjos scene, a moment of pure musical joy that stands in stark contrast to the horror that follows. Cox's performance was the moral center of the film, and his character's demise marked the death of innocence in the narrative. Deliverance was his big-screen debut, launching him from a local stage actor to a Hollywood staple. But for Cox, life was never just about the fame. It was defined by a profound private romance. His marriage to Mary Cox was a rarity in Hollywood, a union that lasted 46 years. It was built on deep devotion, but was constantly tested by the demands of his burgeoning career as he starred in massive hits. Like Beverly Hills Cop and RoboCop, often playing authority figures or villains, he spent months away from home. Despite the distance, their bond remained unbreakable. However, tragedy struck in 2006 when Mary passed away exactly 50 years after their first date. The loss was devastating. The grief was so profound that Cox turned down nearly 90% of the acting offers that came his way. He could no longer find the joy in pretending to be other people when his own world had been shattered. Instead of chasing leading roles, he turned back to his first love, music. He began to tour, performing folk songs and stories inspired by his life with Mary. These annual tours, often taking him to Ireland, became his refuge. In small, intimate venues, he found a way to process his grief and keep Mary's memory alive. Even when he returned to the screen in projects like Dexter or Nashville, there was a new depth and softness to his presence. In 2025, at the remarkable age of 87, Ronny Cox is still defying the passage of time. He plays over 100 concerts a year, traveling the roads with a seemingly timeless endurance. With a net worth of approximately $3 million, he continues to live as a troubadour and a storyteller. Remains a man who walked away from the hollow pursuit of fame to follow the music of his heart, carrying the memory of his greatest love from stage to stage. James Dickey as Sheriff Bullard. James Dickey was the architect of the nightmare. The author of the novel Deliverance, he stepped in front of the camera at age 49 to play Sheriff Bullard, the towering lawman who interrogates the survivors at the end. His presence lent an eerie realism to the finale. He was the creator judging his creations. But the line between the man and the myth was often blurred in Dickey's tumultuous life. Dickey was a literary giant, a U.S. poet laureate, but his personal life was a tempest. He possessed a brilliant mind that was often drowned in alcohol. His marriages crumbled under the weight of his drinking and the instability that fame brought. His first marriage lasted 30 years, but dissolved in the whirlwind of his celebrity. His second marriage was marred by his relentless schedule of teaching and touring. He was a man of intense contradictions, a sensitive poet who projected a hyper-masculine, sometimes aggressive image. His health began to pay the price for his lifestyle in the late 1980s. Years of heavy drinking damaged his liver, leading to jaundice and eventually pulmonary fibrosis. Yet he refused to stop. He continued to teach at the University of South Carolina, wheezing through lectures, pushing his body beyond its limits to share his passion for literature. The final chapter was written on January 19, 1997. James Dickey passed away in Columbia, South Carolina at the age of 73, just 6 days after teaching his final class. His legacy in 2025, with an estate worth around $2 million, remains vast. He was the poet who wrote about the wilderness of the human heart, and in the end he was consumed by the very intensity that made his work immortal. Billy Redden as Lonnie the Banjo Boy. Billy Redden was born in Clayton, Georgia, and at 16 he was plucked from obscurity to play Lonnie the Banjo Boy. He didn't know how to play the banjo, another set of hands provided the finger-picking, but his enigmatic, unsettling expression became the visual icon of Deliverance. That one scene brought him worldwide fame. But for Redden, it was a double-edged sword. He did not pursue a Hollywood career, rather the shadow of Lonnie pursued him. He never married, retreating to a quiet, modest life in Robin County. Role trapped him in a stereotype of the inbred mountain boy, a caricature that haunted him for decades and limited his opportunities. While directors like Tim Burton sought him out for cameos in films like Big Fish to pay homage to his famous scene. These were brief flickers of light in a life defined by blue-collar struggle. Redden worked at Walmart, cooked and washed dishes to make ends meet. He did not grow rich from the film that made millions. The documentary, The Deliverance of Rabun County, highlighted the economic disparity and the emotional toll the film took on the locals. He struggled not with health, but with the economics of survival in a town the movie made famous. In 2025, at 69 years old, Billy Redden still lives a humble life in Georgia. His net worth is negligible in Hollywood terms, reflecting a life of honest, low-paying labor rather than residuals. Yet with a single scene, he achieved a strange immortality. He remains the face of the film's eerie power, a reminder that sometimes cinema uses real people to tell its stories, leaving them to navigate the aftermath long after the credits roll. Macon McCalman as Deputy Queen. Macon McCalman was the face of reason in the chaotic aftermath of Deliverance. Born in Memphis, Tennessee, he was 40 years old when he played Deputy Sheriff Queen. While the other characters were swept away by the river's madness, McCalman portrayed the quiet, astute authority figure who tries to piece together the truth. It was a role that required a steady hand and a calm demeanor, marking a pivotal transition for McCalman from the theater stage to the film set. His life settled into the rhythm of a quintessential character actor. That guy whose face everyone knew even if they didn't know his name. He balanced his ambition with a deep need for stability. His marriage to actress Pat McCalman was a partnership of artists lasting for decades, despite the unpredictable nature of show business. They navigated the long separations caused by his work on Broadway and in Hollywood by cherishing the brief everyday moments they had together. Throughout the 1980s, McCalman was everywhere, popping up in Cheers, Murder, She Wrote, and Three's Company. But as the workload increased, so did the toll on his health. A lifetime of heavy smoking began to catch up with him, leading to chronic breathing problems. In 1997, he suffered a heart attack that effectively ended his rapidly developing career. The recovery was difficult, and subsequent strokes further robbed him of his vitality, preventing him from taking even small supporting roles. He eventually returned to Memphis, where his Hollywood career became a topic of local conversation, a memory of a time when he rubbed shoulders with giants. But the resilience of the deputy sheriff could not hold back the tide of illness forever. Macon McCalman passed away on November 29, 2005, at the age of 72. His net worth of approximately $2 million was the result of a blue-collar approach to acting. He left the screen, as he had entered it, a reliable, dignified presence who proved that there are no small roles, only actors who leave a lasting mark. Seaman Glass as First Griner. Seaman Glass was a man who looked like he had been carved out of the granite of the mountains he inhabited on screen. Born in New York City in 1925, he was 47 when he played the First Griner in Deliverance. He was the burly, intimidating mountain man who confronts the city slickers his presence, exuding a terrifying determination that set the tone for the film's conflict. It was a performance that didn't need many words. His physicality spoke volumes. Once the film wrapped, however, Glass found himself caught in a strange limbo between Hollywood glamour and the gritty reality of a working man's life. He was not a silver spoon actor. He was a man of the sea and the harbor. He tried to balance his acting career with real jobs, working as a teacher and patrolling the harbor. This constant rotation of roles, actor, sailor, officer, undermined his stability. His marriage could not survive the strain, the long sea voyages, and the emotional distance he felt. Describing himself as more of a ghost than a husband led to an irreversible deterioration of his family life, ending in divorce in the late 1970s. His health also began to mirror the wear and tear of his hard life. Partial deafness made it increasingly difficult for him to follow directions on sets like The Other Side of Hell, and he found himself withdrawing from challenging roles. His body battered by years of physical labor, and the intensity of his acting method began to fail him. His lungs weakened, and the fatigue of night shifts at the Santa Monica Harbor patrol took its toll. Even occasional returns to the screen required rest periods he once would have scoffed at. Seaman Glass's journey came to a close on July 12, 2016. He passed away in Los Angeles at the age of 91. He died not as a superstar, but as a man of resilience. His net worth, a modest but stable $12 million, reflected a life of hard work rather than the excesses of fame. He remains the face of the unyielding wilderness, a man who brought a terrifying reality to fiction because he had lived a life of true grit. Charlie Boorman as young Ed. Charlie Boorman was born into the world of film. As the son of director John Boorman, he was cast at the age of 6 as Ed's son in Deliverance. It was a small role, a quiet boy waiting for his father's return, but it marked the beginning of a life that would be defined by adventure and the camera. From that innocent start, Boorman's life unfolded on a path fraught with danger, much like the film itself. He grew up on sets, appearing in his father's films like The Emerald Forest, but traditional acting was a struggle due to severe dyslexia. He found his true calling, not in fiction, but in reality. His passion for motorcycles led to a lifelong friendship with Ewan McGregor and the creation of the Long Way Round and Long Way Down series. These documentaries kept him away from his wife Olivia Payton for months at a time, straining the balance between his thirst for adventure and his family life. However, the greatest challenge wasn't a treacherous road, but a diagnosis. In 2011, Boorman was struck by testicular cancer. The diagnosis was sudden and terrifying, requiring surgery and a difficult recovery that halted his filming. But Boorman used the experience to transform his platform, turning his subsequent adventures into campaigns for men's health awareness. He proved that resilience wasn't just about riding a bike across a continent. It was about surviving life's hardest blows. In 2025, at 59 years old, Charlie Boorman is no longer just the director's son. He is a philanthropist working with UNICEF and leading adventure tours globally. His net worth, estimated at $4 million, comes from his travel books and series. He remains a symbol of survival and curiosity, a man who took the adventurous spirit of Deliverance and applied it to the real world, turning scars into stories. Bill McKinney as the Mountain Man. If there is a face of nightmares in Deliverance, it belongs to Bill McKinney. Born in Arkansas, McKinney was 41 when he played the Mountain Man, the brutal aggressor in the woods. His performance was so terrifyingly authentic that it cemented his image instantly as the ultimate Hollywood villain. He didn't just play a bad guy. He became the archetype of rural terror, a role that would shroud every aspect of his life in a dark shadow. This typecasting bled into his reality. His life became a struggle to separate the man from the monster. His marriages to Felicity, June Bach, and later, Janelle Booth crumbled in part because of his battles with alcoholism and the emotional trauma of being constantly viewed through the lens of his most abusive character. While he found professional success in films like The Outlaw Josie Wales and The Green, mild directors always wanted the darkness, preventing him from finding the lighter stability he craved at home. Before Hollywood, he had been a teacher attempting a normal life, but the industry consumed him. His health began to deteriorate due to years of heavy smoking, which made breathing on the sets of action films increasingly difficult. He worked through the pain, a symptom of the toughness he projected, but inside his body was failing. In the late 2000s, he was diagnosed with esophageal cancer, a cruel disease that rapidly cut short a career spanning 5 decades. Even as he recorded a country album trying to show the world a softer side, the illness was winning. Bill McKinney died on December 1, 2011 at the age of 80 at his home in California. His estimated net worth of $15 million reflected a lifetime of playing the heavy. He left behind a legacy deeply ingrained in American cinema. a man who played a monster so well that the world never quite let him be anything else.